Now, if you couldn't tell from the previous chapter, Opprobrium was a peaceful, sleepy little town. A small village where life was simple, and everyone knew their neighbors by name. While not as isolated as Lefty's hometown, it was still a place that received few visitors, and even fewer interesting visitors. A town that rarely experienced anything that could be described as exciting. With that in mind, it should go without saying that Lefty and Old Blue's dynamic entrance into town was by far the most interesting thing to happen in Opprobrium in quite some time, attracting the attention of pretty much everyone who lived there. Sure, adventurers had passed through town before, but never had they arrived in such spectacular fashion, especially coming from the Food Tabernacle. After taking several moments to recover from their death-defying flight, the two adventurers found themselves seated on a pair of barrels, which sat near the lake's only dock, surrounded by confused Camelians. The villagers were justifiably curious about these two beings who had just literally fallen out of the sky, wanting to know who they were and why they were here. Realizing their advantageous situation, and seeking to take full advantage of it, the wise Old Blue managed to quiet down the crowd, gathering their attention as he began to tell their tale. As you're well aware, listening to a Kicken tell a story can be quite the mesmerizing experience. After all, remembering and retelling stories was one of their most prized traits, a skill that many Kickens relied on to survive, and something they did so well that it often bordered on the supernatural. They don't simply speak using their normal voices. Instead, they take on entirely different speech patterns, their otherwise high-pitched speech becoming fuller and deeper, sounding as if they were a full-grown human rather than a tiny feathered head. This sudden change in tone is almost magical to behold, drawing in the audience's attention and begging them to listen intently. More than an hour later, having heard Old Blue tell the Legend of Lefty to the extent that it existed back then, any reservations the Camelians may have had about the pair melted away, replaced instead with overflowing admiration and respect. Old Blue had told the story so well, in fact, that even Lefty, who had experienced the events first-hand just that day, was moved by it, getting so wrapped up in the narrative that he forgot it was about him and became inspired by his own tale of bravery. Many prominent members of the Camelian community were even more inspired, spurring them to offer the pair any assistance they could. In the outpouring of emotion that followed, the two of them would not only secure passage to the capital, but free food and lodging for the duration of their stay in Opprobrium. As simple as that, all of the concerns that Lefty had expressed atop the Food Tabernacle were erased. A well-told story and a friendly attitude was all it had taken to win the kindness of strangers, who benevolently solved all of their most pressing problems, at least for the moment. The plan was for them to depart for the capital in 2 weeks' time, riding along with the next trade caravan which was scheduled to leave town. From there, the pair would have another 2 weeks to find lodging of their own within the city before the caravan returned to Opprobrium. In the meantime, Lefty and Old Blue were welcome company, free to simply relax and enjoy their new surroundings. For Lefty, the fortnight spent in Opprobrium was a vast and unrivaled learning experience. Everything was new to the young desert dweller, and he was eager to experience all that the town had to offer. Each day he spent time with a different group of Camelians, observing their daily lives with rapt fascination, marveling at the simplest of tasks, finding excitement in the mundane work of farming, woodcutting, and even aquamining. All of this might have been annoying if Lefty was the kind of person to ask a lot of questions. But thankfully for everyone, he learned largely by observing and doing. While he did make the occasional query, much of Lefty's time was simply spent watching his Camelian hosts, enjoying their company, listening attentively to what they had to say, and attempting with mixed results to help them with their work, all of which the townspeople found quite charming. You see, after hearing his courageous acts described in such glorious detail by Old Blue, the Camelians had half expected Lefty to exhibit the kind of prideful, elitist attitude that plagued most the adventurers who made the trek to the food tabernacle. Instead, they found in Lefty an utterly humble man, eager to listen to them, excited to learn their ways, happy to help with their daily chores, and unafraid of getting his hands dirty with manual labor. While Lefty's attempts at helping his Camelian hosts often proved unsuccessful, mostly due to his complete lack of experience, the simple act of trying brought quite a bit of joy to the townspeople's otherwise dull lives, either making them feel better about their own well-honed skills by comparison, or making them laugh at delight at the young human's comically eager incompetence. While I could sit here and tell you every detail of Lefty's stay, elaborating on his more amusing antics, such as his utterly disastrous 14-hour fishing attempt, or his surprisingly gory but nonetheless successful hunting expedition, none of those stories is really important to the rest of his legend. The only day in Opprobrium that would have any long-lasting impact on his journey would actually be a quiet afternoon spent with Sheila, an old Camelian woman who ran a library of sorts out of her humble home, and practiced sleep magic in her spare time. Given that I had to explain food magic to you a while back, I'm going to assume that you know nothing about sleep magic either, or the other two elemental magics for that matter. Since they'll play an important role in the future of the story, and since this is the point chronologically where Lefty was introduced to the other magics, I figure I'll take this opportunity to explain them to you now. As I said before, life is magic, and since food sustains life, it is also magic. But food doesn't sustain life alone. Food, drink, breath, and sleep are all required to sustain life, and together they make up the 4 elemental magics. The first 3 elements are all fairly similar in theory. Just as most creatures must eat food to survive, so too must they ingest liquids and breathe gases. And just as eating magical foods can enhance life, so too can drinking magical drinks and breathing magical gases. The major difference between the 3 schools of magic, aside from their associated states of matter, is the effect that they have on the body. Food is the great sustaining force. Thus, food magic works to heal and restore the body, and great chefs can use their abilities to amplify those restorative properties. Drinks are based around water, the very foundation of life. By modifying water, a great mixologist can modify the body itself, making it harder, better, faster, stronger than it otherwise would be. Breath, meanwhile, is the vehicle for thought, that which is required for consciousness itself. A powerful chemist can craft concoctions which enhance the breather's mental processes, and even alter their perception of reality. Sleep is the odd one out. The only elemental force of life that doesn't involve taking something into the body. Because it's not a magic of the body at all, but entirely of the mind. Unlike the other mages, a great dreamer doesn't simply alter or amplify that which already exists. Instead, they create something entirely new. Of course, just as all food is technically magic, everyone who dreams technically creates something. In their mind, an entire universe populated with strange things is created, much of which defies the natural laws. What makes someone a sleep mage is their ability to bring those things from their world into our own. You see, someone who masters sleep magic can quite literally pull the objects from their dreams into our waking reality, crafting wondrous creations that would otherwise be impossible to make through conventional means. Sleep magic is the least understood, most difficult to perform, and arguably the most powerful of the four magics. And Lefty had never heard of anything so amazing in all his life. Food magic had been incredible, but understandable. Interesting, but not something he wished to pursue himself. Sleep magic, however, seemed like an outright miracle to him, something full of mysticism and infinite possibilities. No sooner had he been introduced to the concept than he decided that he would become a great and powerful sleep mage. This was much easier said than done. Regardless of the discipline, practicing any magic beyond its most basic level is not an easy task, requiring not only an in-depth understanding of science, but a streak of artistic flair as well. Crafting magical bread, for instance, is not as simple as just following a recipe. There must be an understanding of the recipe, certainly, but that will only go so far. A true chef needs passion and artistry to unleash the food's true potential, using the recipe only as a foundation to build upon. Likewise, being a sleep mage isn't as simple as imagining something in your dreams and having it appear in real life. To even begin sleep magic, a dreamer must not only be aware that they're dreaming, they must be able to exercise control over their dreams, a skill that can take a lifetime to master just on its own. Even then, most of the things that people dream up simply can't exist in the waking world. Their physical form built on a foundation of dream logic which is incompatible with reality. In order for an object to survive the trip into reality, it must be expertly crafted within the dream, using the kind of focus and expertise that it's rare to possess whilst asleep, requiring that the would-be sleep mage not only master the skill of lucid dreaming, but also maintain a detailed understanding of advanced physics, mathematics, and logic. All of this was explained to Lefty in an attempt to dissuade him from pursuing sleep magic. The old chameleon Sheila had been attempting it since she was a young girl, and had only recently found even the tiniest bit of success. Lefty, by contrast, had just recently dreamt for the first time ever, and was barely literate. Sheila and Old Blue both warned him that even if he started now, and focused all his attention on it, it was unlikely that he would ever perform a feat of sleep magic. Lefty's excitement, however, could not be deterred by mere words or logic. He was determined to learn sleep magic, with the kind of youthful exuberance that Sheila couldn't help but smile at. And so, with an expression that was equal parts pity and joy, Sheila gave Lefty a pair of gifts. 2 books which she had long since committed to memory. One on the practice of sleep magic itself, and another which explored advanced mathematics and physics. Lefty was overjoyed at the old woman's generosity, treating the books with more reverence than the Clavis Imperium, which still sat at the bottom of his backpack. Throwing his arms around her, Lefty gave the elderly Camelian a big hug, bestowing a warm smile to her face as he thanked her again and again for her generosity. Most of the things that Lefty learned about during his short stay in Opprobrium would stay there. Never again would he attempt to farm, or chop wood, or gather water into a barrel. But thanks to Sheila's gifts, an interest in sleep magic would follow Lefty outside the confines of the village. While he may have been barely literate, Lefty could still read, and now that he had something worth reading, he made sure to do it every night before going to sleep. In the coming months, He would work his way through the books at a snail's pace, barely understanding the material, but never giving up in his attempt to comprehend it. Needless to say, by the time Lefty and Old Blue finally departed from Opprobrium, there was scarcely a soul in town who wanted them to go. And truth be told, Lefty wasn't all that keen on leaving either. There was so much new to experience in Opprobrium, and he had only gotten a taste of it in his 2-week visit. If it hadn't been for Old Blue reminding him of the even greater adventures that lie ahead, Lefty might have stayed in that peaceful little town, and made a home for himself among the friendly Camelians. But for better or for worse, that was not to be. After giving their heartfelt thanks and saying their final goodbyes, the two headed out in a covered wagon on the road to the capital. On the first night of their journey, Lefty dreamed for the second time in his life. And it was exactly the same dream as before. Once again Lefty had returned to his hometown and found it pleasantly abandoned. Once again he made his way through the quiet, empty streets to the site of his former home, intending to relax in his familiar bed. This time, however, as he lay down on the soft straw mattress, he suddenly realized that he was dreaming. The realization was so exciting that he immediately awoke, shooting up in the middle of the night as he shouted out, "I did it!" to the extreme confusion of both Blue and their chameleon hosts. This was followed shortly thereafter by a much quieter and much more disappointed-sounding "Oh," as he realized what had just happened.